We made this.
Engage.
I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise.
Michael Burnham, pleased to meet you.
What we leave behind is not as important as how we've lived.
We will continue exploring, discovering new worlds, new civilizations. That is the United Federation of Planets. That is Starfleet.
Make it so.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Make It So, a Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Kurt North, and welcome back to our special coverage of Star Trek Discovery Season 1. This episode that we are covering is The Wolf Inside, and it was Season 1, Episode 11. It first aired on the 14th of January 2018, written by Lisa Randolph and directed by T.J. Scott. And it sees a continuation of the story, as always, but we are actually getting into the nitty-gritty here and some startling revelations. And to join me to talk about this episode is Luke Winch. Luke, how are you doing, mate?
Greetings, Kurt. I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I'm good. So we're recording this after our little announcement that you'll be co-hosting with me. Mm-hmm. So this is your first episode proper. So how did it feel to be talking Discovery?
It's exciting. I mean, I've rewatched the series, and particularly with this episode, I watched a lot of episodes around the themes and plot threads that this episode goes to. It's amazing how much more you take in and how much more you can enjoy an episode when you're actually analysing it as well, and you take more notice of certain plot threads or certain throwaway dialogue lines that actually have an impact on something later on. So it's a really interesting process doing this and then coming on here and actually having to talk about it as well.
Yeah, there's quite a few themes and little bits that you might not have picked up on originally. And something that I've noticed over the last couple of watches, I've probably watched this about 4 times in the last sort of 6 months, because we were due to record this episode a few months back. So I watched it twice, and then the actual episode itself wasn't recorded, unfortunately. So which is a bonus for you, because you get to come on it. But yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I what do you think to this episode then? What would you rate out of 10 from the season? Because I actually really, really do enjoy this episode. I think it's one of the outstanding ones in season 1. I don't know what you think to that, and what your general thoughts on it.
I think it is actually my favourite episode of Discovery season 1. Like you said, a lot of the plot threads come to a climax in this episode. There are several reveals that are quite shocking, and I think the writing and the construction of the episode and how it plays out is ingenious, and particularly Sonequa and Shazad. I think those two, particularly in a scene towards the end of the program, are absolutely outstanding as well.
Yeah, they are, and there's so many because you've got the beef thread as well. So you've got obviously the Tilly, the Tilly and Saru stuff, which is playing the B plot, which is nice, but does take that backseat as B plots do. But it is still really important, because we get obviously the Stamets reveal towards the end of it, and I appreciate that. But yeah, what jumped out at me was quite a lot of the kind of theme or some of the stuff that they were talking about really works in this episode. So I think it has a lot going for it. And I haven't rewatched. I've been really focused in on watching rewatching season 1 is that I've not jumped ahead or I've tried not to. So there's only been a couple of recordings that I've done that has been where I've seen the following episode. And generally that's because I'm recording the following episode either after that one's been recorded straight away on the day, or it's going to be I'm recording it in a couple of days' time. And what I found is that sometimes you can forget which episode you're talking about, because you're like, oh, when did that happen in this one? Or was that the episode before? So I've been really conscious that I want to just watch along as I'm recording. And that includes the ones I haven't been on, the ones like, for example, Tony's, I think Tony's back again next week. And he was here for last week's as well, which are ones that have been recorded a few months back, and it was good to hear Zach Moore and Tony on the last episode. But I've been obviously waiting and listening and watching to that podcast and episode together. So I've watched the episode and then listened to the podcast. So I've been kind of like keeping ahead of schedule like that, really. But so yes, I've not seen The Vaulting Ambition, but I believe that you've jumped ahead a little bit and watched that one recently as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a context of where this episode sits. So I watched the previous episode and the next one. But like you, it's important not to go ahead, particularly with a kind of novel series where you have chapters that are continuations, and it's hard to kind of lose your place a bit. And it's hard to remember where certain events happened in which episode, because it's such a serialization, and I think it's been talked about quite a bit on Picard as when you and Tony were actually doing Picard, that it's hard to pick out outstanding episodes because it all molds into one story.
Yeah, it does. It is an interesting aspect of modern life. I mean, obviously, Strange New World sounds like it's going to be more episodic, so that will be interesting to see that as we move in. But I think we should maybe dive into the episode proper, and we shall begin the journey now. Right, okay, so we're starting with the teaser, and we see that the Discovery crew are working hard to repair the ship. We've got Stamets is still not there. Some of the seen in that beginning part actually is really interesting. There's a couple of really good camera movements that are obviously digitally done for both the Shenzhou and Discovery, where we kind of zoom into the ship throughout this episode. One's very reminiscent of an earlier episode where we see Michael Burnham running. But this one in particular is where we go through the same kind of run along. So obviously it's probably the same kind of stuff that we've got already in place, that they've already filmed in place, ready, and just readjusted it. But then when we do come into the corridors, the fact that corridor isn't working, the deck 6 isn't working, really gives it that ominous feel to it. And then obviously we do see Stamets. And do you think it's a good cold open, because it goes on for a while as well? It's not a short cold open.
Now, I believe this is the longest cold open before the credits of the series. It goes on for about 15 minutes in total. But yeah, I love this. Like you said, that kind of camera zoom in through the window from space inside the ship. And that first one where we go into the USS Discovery, it's very atmospheric, quite foreboding, with this dark corridor and sparks and flashing lights. And then you get the vocal of Stamets, kind of slightly inaudible voice, and then you slowly discern words, the forest, and I can see him through the trees, which, as we know, is kind of circles back to that towards the end of the episode. But I like the mirroring. I think we're going to be saying mirror and mirroring quite a lot in this episode, but there is a mirroring of the camera zoom into the Discovery, and then a camera zoom into the Shenzhou, where we see Burnham struggling with her undercover persona.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's what you briefly mentioned it in the episode a couple of weeks ago about your introduction. But what do you make to the mirror universe? It's not something that I've been massively fond of in the past. The one I most remember is the couple in Deep Space Nine, and more so Sato in Enterprise. That's the Mirror Darkly episodes, isn't it? So those are the ones that I tend to remember. I haven't, to be fair, seen the Star Trek original ones just yet. But in fact, I think I've seen one of them. But what do you make to the Mirror Universe stuff? Is it something that you particularly enjoy, and what stands out for you with that? Yeah,
I know it kind of divides Star Trek fans, but I really enjoy the Mirror Universe episodes. We were just talking before we started recording that I'd recently watched a kind of Defiant arc. So I started with the Tholian Web, which is the original series, and Kirk and the crew come across the USS Defiant, which is kind of phasing in and out of universe. It's what they call an interphase. And then that story is kind of taken up again in the Mirror Darkly, part 1 and 2 from Enterprise. And that's quite an interesting two-parter because we don't see the Prime Universe counterparts at all. It's all this alternate crew. And though I found some of the acting quite hammy, I thought Mirror Archer was a little bit hammy, but I did enjoy the story, and I enjoyed this this kind of theme of deception. Everyone's deceiving everyone, and there's lies on top of lies, and it eventually gets to Empress Sato at the end. But what I particularly like about Discovery's Mirror Universe is that it's very thematic into all the things that have been going on before. I know that you and Darren were talking about in the first 2 episodes and the prologue episodes about how several characters' journeys through the series mirror each other.
Yeah,
and I think by extension, this is characters looking at themselves in a mirror, and particularly with Burnham, she's kind of looking at herself and struggling with preserving herself, her heart and mind, but also discovering this strength and fortitude that she has, because she has to last so long undercover and pretend to be this Mirror Burnham, which is eating away at her soul. So I like the thematic material behind this visitation to the Mirror Universe, and I think on a thematic level it works very, very well. I know it's visually, all the gold plating stuff, I don't know, it's maybe a little bit aesthetically too far, but thematically and tone wise, I really enjoyed these few episodes.
Yeah, I mean, up to this point, we haven't quite got through to the Lorca reveal for Michael yet, but and I'll hold judgment until we get to those episodes. But a couple of things that you mentioned there, I was going to actually bring up. So one of the first things is about people lying to each other. And there's a really interesting scene, which I think is fascinating in itself, and I think the writing in this episode is really strong, is that you've got Michael lying to Saru about the Kelpians, and then you've got Saru not necessarily lying, but not divulging the information about Culber. And that dichotomy of the two of them there is just... it's beautifully played because they're both trying to protect each other.
Yeah,
they're doing it from a point of view of empathy rather than anything else. And I found that particular thing quite fascinating, because the other, on the flip side, there's also this kind of idea of the tether of Ash and Michael, and it's interesting how it's played with a little bit, because you've got Ash effectively saying towards the end of the episode, basically, I was remaining human for you. But then you've also got Michael, who's really, really afraid that she's going to, she's going to lose it. Then effectively, she's the mutineer. She's capable of, being on this knife edge, that Lorca's trying to play with. But then, it really plays to that card, and especially some of the writing, which I particularly like about it, is that. At the very beginning of this cold open, you've got the transporter sentencing of death, where they transport everyone out, and that is there to build tension for later on when we see Ash and the ultimate, the ultimate, like, sort of what's the word I'm trying to think of? He's completely, well, he's completely changed, and Michael sees him for what he really is. And the whole point of that transporter thing is to think that Michael is that has gone that way, and she will actually allow him to die and lose her Starfleet ideals. And that's what I really like about that cold open. It instills that, one, the transporter for the tension, and allows Michael and Ash to have some kind of tension right at the end, where you think, is Michael actually going to do it? Has it pushed her too far, and is she becoming more of a Mirror Universe Michael than she'd like to admit? And obviously it doesn't at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's several that kind of scene there where the execution plays out in several ways, because, as you said, the writing's really good in this episode, and it plants a lot of little seeds and hints of what's to come. I mean, there's the in the cold open when Burnham and Tyler are in bed, and she says something about what the darkness is waiting inside, which is a brilliant little kind of foreboding of Voq coming out of Tyler, all complete. And then you've got the need for Burnham to get the classified data of the Defiant to them, and eventually through the execution scene, that's how she gets the data out. And it's a very cleverly constructed episode, and everything makes sense and everything is planted. There's nothing that comes out of left field. It's all there and kind of planted. Yeah.
You're reading my mind. Yeah, I mean, because as you say, it's just like everything is planned out pretty much as you need it to be planned out, because all the pieces are there. Everything that you've learned up to now works because Michael's in this position. Ash is on the verge of, he's had all these, like we'd get later on in the scene later on, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is Ash gets to the point where he's actually effectively activated more than anything else. But just while I'm thinking about that, actually, so where do you stand with the Voq thing? So, and I mean this from a couple of angles. One, were you paying attention to online when this was airing, and did you know about the Voq reveal? And two, what do you actually make of the idea of Voq and Tyler?
Yeah, listening to Tony and Zach's, and Tony basically admitted that he didn't see the whole Voq Tyler thing. I didn't either. So Zach can come at me and say that I'm stupid as well if I didn't get it. But I didn't see it coming, and I purposely stayed offline because I like to go in blind with these things, and I try not to read up on too much stuff. But I didn't see the Voq Tyler thing coming until these kind of reveals.
Yeah, well, I can't see anything, so I'm protected because I was online. So it's like I knew it was a running rumor for a number of weeks, and I was like, oh, could it be? Is it? Oh, yeah, it's going to be, isn't it? So yes, I'm exempt from this story, but do you actually like the actual way that it's built into the story?
I do, yeah, because I like the idea of this kind of infiltrator who cannot be, well, who potentially cannot be found out, cannot be exposed because there's such a familiarity with him, and from the very beginning when he's able to get the trust of Lorca when they were in, and it all makes sense now because this infiltration was meticulously planned by him and Laurel. But when you were watching it the first time, it was natural. It was natural, the progression of integrating Tyler into the crew of the Discovery. So I really like the way they did that, and I also really like the ambiguity and the vagueness of all these flashbacks to him to Voq being transformed and reduced to a human body. There's lots of very flashy visuals, and nothing's ever kind of said concrete. It's very ambiguous and very vague, and I like the way that it does that, because I think if they tried to do it in such a succinct way, it might not have sat well. It might not have worked as well.
Yeah. So the age-old new Trek conversation comes up. Because obviously we had the eye socket in Star Trek Picard, and this one's quite graphic as well. What's your opinion on the graphic nature of Discovery and the occasional use of the F-bomb and stuff?
It's something that doesn't really bother me. I'm not insulted by the F word at all. I think,
that's fucking great, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm the same as you. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, to be honest. I understand the reasons why that people want to see it, and with the families and things like that. And Star Trek was that kind of show, But I mean, you got things like Conspiracy and Star Trek Next Generation, which obviously has a particular scene towards the end of that one. So TV has moved on. You've got Lower Decks again, which isn't. It has its moments. It's not. It has little bits here and there, but obviously the Nickelodeon one. So there will be things that people can use and watch, and I think I can't remember who it was now, but when we were talking, we've got 700 odd episodes of Star Trek to watch anyway. It's not as if you've got this and this only. So you can build up to this episode at some point. So it's it's at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I don't mind it at all. So the other thing I'd like to sort of come on, I mean, I mentioned Michael before about her being on the edge of the edge of darkness as such, but also which is in relation to Saru, or Slave Ru, as I'm naming him, Slave Ru, is that she does actually in this cold open actually call him Saru, and then quickly jumps back on it because she's let her guard down and has let it slip. But what I particularly like, again, the writing with this episode is that without having that slip, without having her have this affinity for somebody who obviously she knows, but he has no idea in the mirror universe that Saru exists, that we need that again, because towards the back end of the episode, we've got her effectively being rescued and protected by Saru because of the attack by Ash. So again, it's one of those things where it's planted in there as part of, you're giving him a name, you're giving him something to think about, and actually treating him like, in inverted commas, a human being or a Kelpian, like should be treated. And that's another theme that comes throughout this episode about We Are Starfleet. And Saru mentions that. So Saru is in the B story. He's actually quite important for the A story as well. I mean, do you particularly like Saru in this episode?
I do. And thinking about it, in a way, I think that Burnham's tether may not necessarily be Tyler, but her tether is Saru through the slave, and that her kind of just instinct to call the slave Kelpian Saru, I think is a need for familiarity, a need for comfort, and I think that slip is a kind of unconscious need for that comfort. And you're right. I think that kind of slip it opens the door to him saving her and protecting her when Tyler Rock is attacking her, and I think it's a very important factor to the episode.
It is, yeah. So we get the orders. Obviously, the whole premise of this episode is that we're talking about mirroring, and we'll get to Vok and Nash as we get down the line. But we've also got this idea of the fact that they've got to go down to the planet, that Michael has to kind of formulate some way around this, because the very ideal, the very goal of this episode, which is why it's brilliant writing, is that somehow a Klingon, the wolf, the fire wolf as such, has managed to form an alliance, and it's not lost on me. It's like the Kelpians and Andorians, and the Vulcans, and as I say, the Klingons as well. Is that it's very much like a federation of sorts, and she basically calls it out as that, as how has a Klingon managed to get all of these people together? And she goes to Lorca, and Lorca's kind of like, is very much like follow through the mission, and he says a couple of things which is like a couple of things that jump out really. So the end justifies the terrible means, and but then Michael actually again as I mentioned ever so briefly before, she went, no, we are Starfleet. I am still Starfleet at the end of the day. Even though we don't have the pips in this universe, we are still Starfleet. And that she wants lives to be saved. And that's very similar to actually thinking about it to Picard, because obviously Picard says it's not Romulan lives, it's lives, and this one, it's not mirror universe lives, it's lives. So she's still like, has that ideal. And I think that really works quite well, because obviously they've then got to make this story. But what do you think to Lorca actually saying, well, it has to be you and Ash going down there and no one else? Because that in itself has its own grey area and intimates something as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I find it hard to pinpoint Lorca's motivations in this episode. Because, I mean, in the previous one, there's the beginning of the episode where he basically says, we're not in our universe anymore. And I don't know about you, but I find it hard to figure out, and it's probably due to Jason Isaacs' brilliant acting, but you can't tell if he wants to be there, if he's glad that he's back, or that he's afraid that he's back. So when it comes to this episode and his kind of motivations are first saying you have to drop the bombs, you have to blow up Harlech, and then kind of Burnham going, I can't, because as you said, it's lives down there. So he then switches tact and says, you know, just you and Tyler. I don't know what, if that has any ulterior motives or not, or whether it's just the fact that those who've got to go down there so her cover isn't blown and she has to do something else on the surface, which of course she does. Yeah,
I think it's just a case of protectionism. Personally, I think he kind of if she gets found out, then his plan goes to pot. So the fact that that she's wanting to do this, that he can't exactly persuade her not to, even though he's tried, and it doesn't work. He plays the long game a lot, Lorca. So I think that he's got to the point where it's like, well, if Ash and Michael go down there, because they out the people that he knows he trusts the most, because obviously do they go down there and reveal who they are really, then that could spoil his plans. So, and it's also a way of just keeping them on side. I personally feel that that's what it is anyway. I'm trying to think. So when we're down there, because we'll talk about the B story in a bit, but just jump into the when we're down there stage where they land on the planet and, you know, Ash is ready to fight. Michael kind of says, you know, realizes that if she gives up, then, you know, it'd be take me to your leader kind of thing. And we get the reveal that Vok is the firewolf, which I think is a nice reveal. I don't remember if that was something I was surprised to see or not at the time. But what I quite like is that within the mirror universe, it's not overt so much in this one, but talking about mirroring, when we see Vok and Ash Tyler in the same place, knowing what we know now, it's and his visceral reaction to him is something else, and I think it really plays really well in this episode.
Yeah, I really like the way that because there's a few words spoken. Kalish is the trigger word, and then there's a few words spoken which are very similar to the prayer that L'Rell started saying to him in the previous episode. And I like, sorry, excuse me, I like the quick flashbacks to Kuvma. And there's also mirroring here of when Burnham's explained to Vok, you know, how Vulcans and Tellarites and Andorians and Klingons, how have they compromised to work together despite their cultural differences. And then you get that flashback of Takuma verbally attacking those very same races. But I like how Tyler, it's almost as though something's starting to wake up in him. It's almost like starting a motorbike, and you get that kind of revers, and each kind of key word is kind of triggering this result in him. And I like the fact that it could be the Vok in him who is disgusted by the Vok in front of him. This Vok who's willing to compromise Klingon culture and Klingon values. And I really like that aspect of it.
Yeah, and as I say, to put him, that whole mirror element is the way the mirror universe should really work, and that's what I like about this, is the fact that, you know, he's physically seeing him, even though, you know, we're still getting the back and forth with them. But then on rewatch, you kind of look at it and go, "This is really good stuff." And as it was mentioned, like, so, you know, the fact that you mentioned about the people who are attacking the Tellarites and the Andorians are all the people that we've already seen early in the show's run, and it's obviously like a Federation kind of thing as well. That, you know, they were the ones that kind of built the foundation of the Federation up, and so there's a lot going on there. And then obviously we get which has to happen in this, because obviously the trust has to be gained quickly and effectively, and bringing Sarek in is the perfect response to that, because it just allows them to quickly get through that section to enable them to trust the humans. Because the thing is, it's the Terran Empire. So the fact that, you know, are you going to really think that a human is going to act in a human way, which is basically, you know, tyranny and all that kind of thing. And you have to break that down, because Michael is human. and the fact that, the prophet as Sarek comes in, which is a great reveal. I do like the reveal on that. Really works. And then the fact that he says, like, I've never seen human compassion, that words that we're so used to because of the world in which we live in. And, the fact it's not the Terran way, it's just, it's completely alien to us how people can act, or a race, not necessarily people, because we do have people that act like that way. But the fact that the words like human compassion, I've never seen anything like this with this type of human compassion, really works in this way, because it's more about the aspects of the culture rather than just being a hampy way of bringing up the mirror universe. And I like that. I think works really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really clever use of the mirror universe. It almost acts as an extension of the Burnham and Sarek arc. So even though their special link only exists in the Prime universe, I think that link has an effect on Mirror Sarek and what he sees, and all the little images of her life from her childhood in Vulcan and her being charged and stuff. But I like, he sees that human compassion, but he also sees the wisdom. So he's basically seeing an expression of her two halves, Vulcan and human, which I really like as well. And it's also an emotional win for Burnham. It's almost like an absolution of the failure that she felt in Prime Sarek's eyes, that she was always the second choice under Spock. And even though it's not our Sarek, that there is a certain degree of an emotional win for Burnham that he respects her, even though he doesn't know her. Yeah,
because she'll take that as a personal, vindication. She'll take that away with her. I mean, obviously, the real Sarek won't really fathom that unless there is this loose connection between the two of them. You never know. But I do like the whole reason why she's down there is that they want to work out how can this universe, how can a Klingon be the one that brings them all together? And she gets the answer, and the answer, I think, is really effective. Thinking over the season, I think is really effective, because the answer is that you need to unite the 24 houses together, which is obviously which is what you're saying is what Takuvma was trying to do, was to unite the 24 houses, but it was in uniting them in hatred and in narcissism and whatever it may well be. And in this one, or in this universe, it's uniting them so that they can defeat an enemy. And I think he says something like, an enemy of the Terran Empire is a friend kind of thing. And the only way they can do that is they have to unite the 24 houses before we can invite anyone else in. And that is a perfect way to mirror the two universes together.
There's also an argument to be made that this discussion of working together and compromising despite cultural differences, there's an argument that this could be a metaphor for refugees or immigrants kind of adapting to the cultural society of others and an integration into a new socio-political environment, maintaining their culture and respecting others' culture, but through compromise achieving the same goal, which is essentially what the Federation is and essentially what this alliance is. And I like that kind of real-world analogy as well.
Yeah, and on the flip side to that as well is that you've got something came in my notes actually, that the Klingon language is almost but forgotten.
I like that,
because it's an interesting concept, because it's like if this was a universe in which the Klingons just lived and were working with the Alliance forces and they're here to defeat the enemy, get the enemy out, they'll get the Terrans out of the way, and then form what they would think is their Federation kind of thing. That is enough. But the fact that they're saying that this is goes way over the complete opposite to the way Takuvma was, whereas they were afraid of that very thing. They were very afraid of the Klingon language, the Klingon way, the Klingon culture being forgotten. And the answer is somewhere in the middle. So the answer, that fact that this isn't an ideal universe by any means, because obviously it's not. It's a Terran Empire at the end of the day, and it's still playing out that the fact that Takuvma is trying to do one thing, or try to do one thing, and that in this mirror universe, that thing has completely been decimated. and it's the very thing that they fear. But we're in the middle of that. What the actual reality is that they're in the middle. The Federation is in the middle of that. They're not there to do what the Mirror Universe Terran Empire has done. They're not there to, to take the fact that, the Klingons should be this whole Nazism kind of like takeover, this right-wing agenda aspect of like we are our own, this kind of independent kind of thing. It's in the middle. It's in the middle. The Federation are looking to embrace the culture, to let them have their culture, but also to involve everyone and to this utopia idea, to gain that utopia. And by mentioning that forgotten Klingon tongue just has so much weight behind it.
Yeah.
But it's just a throwaway line, which I think is brilliant.
Did make me think about how, has the Andorian culture deteriorated? Have they lost any aspects of their society or culture, or or the Vulcans, have they had to sacrifice anything as well? So it brings up all sorts of questions about what these other races have had to do and how they've had to compromise and sacrifice their own self in order for this kind of alliance to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the B story then. Let's talk about Tilly and Saru, because it's only, as I say, the main thing about it is to get Stamets to meet Mirror Stamets, and then to push this story forward. But within it, we do have the command training program, which Tilly is kind of aspiring to. And I think that's the main focus on this B story, is that Tilly had mentioned that Stamets said she was captain, and all of a sudden she realised she is captain here, but not the way that she'd like it to be. That she's really, for her, that she is the... I had to write this down. Astromycology. She's actually leader in astromycology. And then she wants Saru, if we ever get back to the universe, to come back and, push her into the command training program, that she's that willing and that eager to be, to better herself, which is the Star Trek ideal. It's nice to have Tilly as a character in the season, because obviously she is someone that naturally people migrate to as one of their favourite characters. What do you think to her arc up to this point then, especially with this B story being that, she's trying to help Stamets in the way, and she probably feels a bit of responsibility for what happened as well, and she's a bit of atonement for that as well. But what did you make to her in this episode? Yeah,
I was going to say, I think she has a personal responsibility to save Stamets because she was so much involved, and I think that commitment shows when she gets really upset when he flatlines later on. But I like the fact that this situation with Stamets is a way for Tilly to kind of make herself feel useful and know she has a purpose. That she explains, medicine can't save him. This is a spore issue. This is a science issue where I excel in. And I like that she grabs onto that, and she really believes that she can save Stamets. And I think she gets spurred on as well by Saru's kind of allowance that, for her to go ahead with it. Yeah. And what I like about this storyline is it's kind of the hard sci-fi concept of this episode. You've got a lot of the drama going on with Burnham and Tyler and all the stuff in the Shenzhou, and this is much more of a kind of hard sci-fi storyline. And I remember you and Amy talking about this concept of the convergence of physics and biology, and it's kind of one of the same. Yeah. And if we were to kind of give it a real life counterpart, you'd probably talk about quantum biology, which is quite a new area of science, where you look at a biological process, but through the point of view of quantum physics. Like, for instance, birds navigate using Earth's magnetic field through entanglement. And in a way, the spores in the mycelial network kind of works in a similar way. And the fact that Tilly is so up on this, it gives her a real sense of purpose, and I think it's a real growth of her character. Yeah, definitely. I think it's, as I say, it takes seconds seat into the main story, but it's still no less part of her character arc, and the way that you can run with seasons like this is that. But I like quantum biology. I'm definitely going to have to look more into that. When you said the migration of the electromagnetic field, I was like, ooh, might have to look at that. Yeah, it's a really interesting area.
Yeah. So the main thing here as well is that we get the culmination of everything that's been coming on, and the actual scene with Michael and Ash in the quarters, because he's kicked off down on the planet because of what's happened and the realization of Vok, and as you say, all those trigger words that have kicked in. He's attacked them and stuff, and we get this all culminating together with eventually the realization. And I think the hardest hitting part was when they started saying, "Let's get you back to Dr. Culber," and he says, "Well, I killed him," kind of thing. So that was the turning point. And that was like the real darkness in the episode, was when he says that Culber's dead. And obviously Saru's already withdrew that information or kept that information away from Michael. So this is a complete shock to her. But it does really well. And the actual conversation that Michael and Ash have here is the epitome of everything that's happened. And what did you make to this scene? And as we already mentioned, Saru saves her at this, but the conversation that they have within this story and the actual, basically, him fighting for his very humanity, and then he does effectively now change back into Vok and who he is in real, as he is really.
Yeah, in terms of writing and acting, I think this is probably one of the standout scenes of the season. Like I mentioned in the outset, I think Sonequa and Shazad are incredible, and essentially, the context is they both lose their tether in this scene.
Yeah.
The tether's broken. Tyler's kind of lost his tether to his human personality, his Ash Tyler personality, and Burnham's kind of lost a lifeline to herself and to the universe and to love. So I love that aspect of it, and I also love Burnham's refusal to believe that he's a Klingon, and that her belief is chipped away by these little details. So it's he mentions Culber's murder, which kind of chips away at her. Then him saying, "You killed my lord," and then hearing that when he says, "You scratched my eyes," and this is a piece of information she didn't testify to, and that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and she realizes that he is Vok. And I think that slow and steady realization to her is it's really powerful scene.
Yeah, and I think even on the reverse of that, and little things that people might miss on the first watch is a line I'm particularly like. It's I resisted by thinking of you, and you're the one I wanted to remain human for. So it gives even though we're having this huge turnaround, we're still having that element that can be played on later in the season, because it's still say you're the one, you're my tether. Maybe it's gone now, but there's you're the one reason why I wanted to remain human, and again, remain Klingon was the line at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I've got I need to rewatch this, because I caught this at the end of my last watch this afternoon, and it's one of those things I'll say I'll go back to, but I won't. so maybe someone can testify to this. But in the actual flashback of Michael shooting using the phaser, she's left-handed. In this scene, she's right-handed, and I don't know which way she normally holds a phaser. And I'm wondering if that's a mirror thing, or it might be me just reaching too far. But she definitely shoots left-handed in the flashback scene, and then when she's holding the gun here, she's definitely holding it right-handed, unless she's just ambidextrous, which is fine. But it'd be a nice little touch if that's the case.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and watch that, because that's something that I didn't really catch. But it's an interesting notion, though, because it's another mirroring. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just guessing. And it might just be that she's ambidextrous, but it's just something I might, even if it's a case of when we go back to the normal universe and she maybe hold a gun, it's which way does she hold that gun? Because it'd be interesting. Because I always find that, I know I always go back to X-Files, and I apologize, is because I'm left-handed. So whenever I see anyone left-handed, Scarlett Johansson's left-handed, I was like, oh, she's left-handed. Great. Which is another string to her bow, but let's not talk about that. But Robert Patrick, as John Doggett, he's left-handed as well. So it's always nice to see left-handers when they're actually onto TV. But yeah, I just noticed it, and that's probably the reason why I noticed it this time. I was like, oh, she's holding that left-handed, and it jumps straight into the next scene or that goes back from the flashback and she's holding it right-handed. But anyway, so that's something to look into.
There's a moment.
Go on.
Sorry, there's a moment in that scene that one of my favourite moments is once Saru's thrown him across the room and the guards come in. There's a moment there where Burnham's undercover persona slips and she looks so scared and vulnerable and heartbroken, but it's there for a couple of seconds, and then she immediately has to put her face on again, and she has to, of all the trauma that she's just gone through, she has to remain Mira Burnham, and I think that's a testament to the strength of her character, that she knows she has to continue with the mission and carry on, and it's just it's that one little moment, but it's a really powerful moment.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And then finally, we come to Lorca after all that, and Lorca we have a very quick conversation with after we get Tyler getting beamed out into space and then collected by Saru, and again we get that "We Are Starfleet" thing, which is great. Just to mention that we do have a Star Trek Discovery podcast called "We Are Starfleet," just to remind people. But stay with us for the next couple of weeks. But yeah, we've got that aspect of Saru being very much to his ideals. That's something we've seen in Saru over the weeks, and no doubt you would have heard that over the last few weeks that we've talked about. The last 3 episodes of Make It So that we've talked about that. And then we get the reveal of who the Emperor is. Now, did this surprise you at the time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't see it. Again, I stayed off the internet. I didn't see it coming. The fact that it's Emperor and not Empress was a good kind of little hiding place type thing. But no, I did not see this coming at all. It was a good twist, good surprise.
Yeah, and obviously she has to still maintain, going back to the whole maintaining a Mira Burnham thing. And the fact that the sheer weight of that as well, of what that means, and obviously we'll get to talk about that in later episodes, is really important. And the fact that you didn't necessarily see that coming, and they hold the guest star off as well. So it doesn't say special guest star at the beginning, which was a bit of a problem for Star Trek Picard. So. But never mind. That was a shame that they did that. But on this one in particular, it was well done because they left it to the end of the episode, and said guest starring, I'd say right at the very end, which is great. And that calls the episode to a close. So unless there's anything else, do you have anything else you want to bring up?
I think I've covered everything. I'm just looking at my notes, but no, I don't think there's anything else. Oh, I was just thinking about the title of the episode, The Wolf Within. Has a nice kind of
Wolf Inside.
Yeah, the Wolf Inside. It has a nice triptych kind of meaning. So you could take it as the wolf in Tyler is Vok in Tyler and his reveal. You could see it as the reveal that Mira Vok is the Fire Wolf. And then the one I like is you could see it as the wolf inside Burnham and her ability to impersonate Mira Burnham and bring out the worst of herself out, but compartmentalize her good self and this kind of beast inside her that she has to use to get through day by day. So I just like that triptych kind of meaning to the title.
It's something I forgot to mention. Actually, I was going to mention it earlier on, but I think you have the ciphers in your Observing the Pattern podcast, so you're used to looking at stuff like that. But yeah, so that brings this week to a close. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, actually. So we've got, I'm saying I'm actually back in a couple of weeks' time. We've recorded an episode, What's Past His Prologue with Una McCormack. So that was really good, a really good conversation. So you'll be hearing that in a couple of weeks. We've got Tony Black next week. I actually said there, Tony Black next week. I was going to say Tony Back next week. We've got Tony Black back next week. With Craig McKenzie, who's obviously Rarely Going, who's on Rarely Going as well. So that's a nice bit of mirroring there, which is good. And then Luke, we're here for the final 2 episodes as well. So we're here for The War Without and The War Within, and Will You Take My Hand as well, which takes us up to the end of the season. And then the following week we have Star Trek Discovery Season 3, which we're so looking forward to. It's definitely worth waiting those few weeks. Keep us going, Luke. Definitely. So. In the meanwhile, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Luke_Winch. I'll generally be tweeting about science fiction in general or science. I do another podcast with the We Made This podcast network called Observing the Pattern, which is a Fringe podcast. Fringe ran from 2008 to 2013. Great little sci-fi series about parallel universes and the importance of family. So if you've ever seen Fringe and like it, then come and join us at Observing the Pattern. And then you can also find me on Rarely Going, which is our We Made This network podcast about Lower Decks, and I'll be hosting 2 more times, I think, in its run, and that's it.
Excellent. Well, it was what is it called? What was it this week's called? Edict. It was a Cupid Edict or something.
Yeah, something like that.
So I'm not that I am on it, but I really enjoyed this week's. I think the last 2. I know that I was on the last one, but these last 2 episodes have definitely been the best for me. And this one was particularly good. So, really enjoyed watching that last night. So you can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE. This is probably the best podcast to get me on at the moment. There is some stuff in the works currently. So in a couple of weeks, or a few weeks' time, 2 or 3 weeks' time, I'll be restarting the Millennium podcast, which is the Time Is Now pod. And that's based on the TV show Millennium, which was on from 1996 to 1999. So we're doing the 3rd and final season, of which I've got around 6 to 7 recorded already, ready to go. So that's going to be great doing that. You've also got the other things that are currently on hiatus. So the Red Dwarf podcast, Shipwrecked and Comatose. We will be doing a special, which I'm not involved in, but then season 2, which is coming in October. And that is at Red Dwarf Pod, and the podcast is called Shipwrecked and Comatose. And then we've got the X-Cast, which will be coming back later in the year as well, which is the X-Files podcast, and you can find that at Twitter at the X_cast. So those are the best places to find me. So, Luke, as always, I need you to set a course for me.
Course set.
And engage.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Back to the decade.
They're a tour bus of people, and then The Rock takes over the tour bus, and he's driving that, and he takes that head on with the criminals, and then the car like explodes into their car, and then those cars explode into the building behind it, and then once they
which is very pointedly Trump Tower, which they could not have.
Oh wow! Is it really?
They could not have known back then, but I noticed that when I was watching it this most recent time, and I was like, that's very funny.
Pick a disc.
And you probably sing along and stuff, and then kind of forget it exists until immediately you meet someone called Stacy, and then immediately he's like, duh, duh, duh. Again. Yeah. So... And I think,
I think it's that song that a lot of bands have that kind of opens the door a little bit. For me, it was, I got the album because of that song, and then kind of I grew up around the rest of the album, I guess, and started to see that the depth and the talent that went into the other songs.
Observing the Pattern, a Fringe podcast.
They are humans, of course they are. It's also a nice, like you said, a very nice moment.
Yeah, it's lovely. And I think with Olivia, with any kind of policeman or detective or agent who works for the FBI or anything like that, if they work in a particularly nasty sector, say for violent crimes, they have to put up these psychological barriers. Otherwise, they're just. I mean, a lot of them burn out after a couple of years anyway.
Yeah.
But I can kind of apply that to Olivia. She has a lot of walls she puts up.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. Make It So, a Star Trek Universe podcast, was created and is produced and hosted by Tony Black and Kurt North. You can find the show on Twitter at Jean-Luc Podard and on Facebook in the Make It So, a Star Trek podcast fan group discussion group. Check out the We Made This network at We Made This Pod on Twitter and on Facebook by typing in We Made This and you can find all of our shows on our website, wemadethispod.com. Thanks for listening.